Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something real quick. When was the last time you said yes and regretted it the second you did? See, most people think being available is being kind, but there's a thin line between kindness and being a doormat. And the truth is, when you stop making yourself available to everything and everyone, your peace returns, your clarity sharpens, and your power, it explodes. Let's talk about what really changes when you finally stop showing up for the wrong things. Do you ever notice how some people think love is measured by how available you are to them? How quickly you text back, how fast you say yes, how often you show up, no questions asked. Somewhere along the line, we got it twisted. We started believing that constant access equals connection, that always being there means you care more. But that's not love. That's not loyalty. That's just access. And here's the thing, access is earned, not assumed. See, when you're always available, always reachable, always saying yes, people stop appreciating your time. They start expecting it. And what used to be gratitude becomes entitlement. What used to be, thank you so much for being here for me, turns into, why didn't you answer? The shift is subtle at first, but then it snowballs and suddenly you're not helping anymore. You're just being used. You start feeling tired, overwhelmed, even resentful, but you keep showing up, don't you? Because that's what you've always done. You've always been the reliable one, the strong one, the one who picks up the phone no matter how drained you are, the one who rearranges your schedule, sacrifices your sleep, burns out quietly just so nobody else feels uncomfortable. But here's the truth. You are not here to be everyone's emergency contact in life. You are not here to be the emotional dump truck for people who only call when they need unloading. And I know that's hard to hear, especially for those of us who were taught that love is self-sacrifice. That being needed is the same as being loved. But those two things are not the same. Being needed is conditional. Being loved is not. When you stop being constantly available, you start seeing the difference. You start seeing who values you for who you are and who only values what you have. Do for them. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also the first step to reclaiming your peace. Because if you don't put a value on your time, your energy, your presence, someone else will. And I promise you, they'll undervalue it every time. You've got to understand your presence is powerful, but if you hand it out like a free sample, don't be surprised when people treat it like it's disposable. We teach people how to treat us, not with our words, but with our patterns, with what we allow, what we tolerate, what we keep giving, even when it's not being returned. And let's not confuse boundaries with bitterness. Setting limits isn't about cutting people off. It's about cutting off the behaviors that drain you. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. And the clearer you are about your value, the less explaining you have to do. When you shift from being endlessly available to being intentionally present, people notice. At first, some might not like it. They might say, you've changed, that you're distant, that you're not the same, and they're right. You have changed. You've learned the difference between support and self-sacrifice, between being helpful and being used, between being loved and being accessed. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, let it. Growth always disrupts comfort, especially the comfort of those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. You're allowed to be less available to chaos, less available to disrespect, less available to people who only show up with open hands and empty hearts. Because when you start protecting your energy, the right people will respect it. The wrong ones will resist it. And that's how you know who's really for you. So no, being available all the time isn't love. It's not loyalty. It's not strength. It's just habit. A habit that can be broken and replaced with something far more powerful. Intention. Every yes you give costs something. A lot of times we don't realize that in the moment we just say yes out of habit, out of guilt, out of this invisible pressure to keep the peace, avoid the awkwardness, or maintain the image of being the go-to person. But every yes you hand out comes with a price tag, and that price is usually paid by you. When you say yes to things that don't align with your values, your time, or your capacity, you are borrowing energy from your future self. You are signing up for frustration down the line. And that version of you 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, is going to have to deal with the weight of that decision you made just to avoid disappointing someone else. It starts small. You say yes to picking up the extra shift. You say yes to attending the event you don't have the energy for. You say yes to helping someone out with something you didn't actually want to do, and then it piles up. Your calendar is full, your mind is cluttered, and your peace, it's gone. All because you couldn't say 2 letters and Noah, a but. No doesn't make you rude. Saying no doesn't make you cold. Saying no simply means you're choosing to respect your own limits instead of constantly pushing past them for the sake of someone else's comfort. You're not being unkind. You're being responsible. And let me tell you, the most responsible thing you can do is manage your energy with the same seriousness you give to managing your money. Think about it. If you had a limited amount of money in your account, you'd think twice before swiping your card on things that didn't serve you. But with time and energy, we just give it out freely, like we're never going to run out until we do, until we're sitting in burnout, wondering how we got here, and realizing we traded our peace for approval that didn't even last. That's the thing. The people you bend over, backward for, most of the time they forget the favor quicker than you remember the exhaustion. And here's the hard truth. The more you say yes out of fear, the more people expect it. You teach them that your boundaries are flexible, your time is negotiable, and your needs come last. That becomes the norm. But when you start to honor your no, things begin to shift. You start making decisions that align with your values instead of your fears. You start showing up in places that deserve your presence, not just demand it. You begin to see that not every opportunity is meant for you. Not every request is your responsibility. Not every call needs to be answered. And guess what? The world doesn't fall apart when you say no. People adjust. Sure, they might be surprised at first. They might push back, try to guilt you, maybe even fall silent for a while. But that's not your burden to carry. That reaction, that's their discomfort with your boundary, not your job to fix it. Because here's what happens when you stop saying yes automatically. Your yes regains its value. It becomes something people appreciate again, not expect. It comes from a full place, not an empty one. From intention, not obligation. And people can feel the difference. A yes that comes from overflow feels different than a yes that comes from depletion. One builds trust, the other builds resentment. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to disappoint others in the name of not abandoning yourself. You are allowed to say that doesn't work for me and not follow it with a paragraph of justification. No is a complete sentence. Every yes is a trade. So start asking yourself, what am I trading for this? My peace, my time, my mental clarity, my sleep, my health, and is it worth it? If the answer is no, then the response should be to. When you start pulling back, when you stop being so immediately available, something really interesting happens. You start to see things for what they really are, not what you hoped they were, not what you tried to make them be, just the truth, plain and simple. Because when you're constantly showing up for people, it creates a kind of illusion. You're always there. You're always texting first, always checking in, always making time. And so it can feel like everything is solid, like your relationships are balanced, like you're part of a healthy give and take. But the moment you stop initiating, the moment you stop rescuing, the moment you stop rescuing, the moment you stop saying yes, without hesitation, the curtain gets pulled back. And what's behind it? Silence. Not from everyone, but from the ones who were only connected to you because of what you did, not because of who you are. See, your absence is louder than your presence ever was. People feel it when you step back, when you stop answering every late night call, when you stop rearranging your schedule to accommodate theirs. When you stop texting, just checking on you because you're finally checking on yourself. That shift, it's powerful and it's revealing because the people who were only around for convenience, who relied on your constant availability but never gave the same back, they start to fall off, and that can hurt at first. It really can. It makes you question, were they ever really there for me at all? But don't rush to fill the space their absence creates. Let that silence do what it does best. Reveal, because in that space, the real ones show up. The people who genuinely care about you. Not just what you provide, They feel the shift and they lean in. They check on you. They notice silence. They respect your boundary. They don't guilt you for pulling back because they understand something deeper. Love doesn't demand constant access. It respects space. That's how you know who's in it with you. Because when people care about they're not waiting around for you to carry the entire connection. They're not keeping score, but they are showing up. Not just when they need something, not just when it's easy or convenient, but when it matters. And the shift, this stepping back, it's not about testing people. It's about getting honest. Honest with yourself and honest with what's been taking up space in your life. Because the truth is, when you're always giving, always doing, always reaching out, you don't have time to assess whether it's mutual. You're too busy holding everything together to notice that some people stopped holding their end. A long time ago, but when you stop, everything becomes clear. You stop begging for effort. You stop wondering if you're too much or too sensitive. You stop chasing people who were never committed in the first place. And in that stillness, you learn the most valuable lesson of all. The right people don't disappear when you create distance. They draw closer. They match energy. They meet you halfway without needing a map. And the ones who drift away, let them make room for people who actually see you, who actually value you, not just your time, not just your availability. It's wild how much noise we let into our lives under the label of friend, family, support. But when you go quiet, when you set a boundary, when you protect your peace, only the voices that are real echo back. So don't fear the distance. Don't fear the discomfort of people adjusting to the new version of you. You are not abandoning anyone. You're just finally choosing not to abandon yourself. When you pull back, the real ones step up. Your energy is currency. And just like with money, if you keep spending it on things that don't give you anything back, eventually you'll end up drained emotionally, mentally, and physically. The problem is we don't always treat our energy like it's valuable. We act like it's endless. We give it out freely without boundaries, without intention, like we're never going to run out. But we do. And when we finally hit that wall, when we're tired and short-tempered and barely holding it together, we wonder how we got there. We got there because we were spending without checking the balance. Every conversation you entertain, every text you respond to out of obligation, every situation you step into just to keep the peace, that's a withdrawal. And if you're not refilling somewhere, if you're not pouring back into yourself, you're operating in a deficit. That's not sustainable. Not in your relationships, not in your work, not in your peace. It's not selfish to be mindful of your energy. It's wise. It's responsible. Because not everything deserves your presence. Not every fight is worth your voice. Not every invitation deserves a yes. And just because someone has access to you doesn't mean they should be able to pull from your energy bank whenever they want. You've got to ask yourself, where's my energy going? Who or what is getting the best of me? And is it mutual or is it one-sided? Because if you're constantly pouring into people who only take, if you're always showing up for people who disappear when you need them, then you're not being supportive. You're being depleted. There's a difference. Support means there's a flow. There's give and take. There's reciprocity. Depletion means the giving never stops and the taking never ends. And here's what happens. You start feeling resentment. You start wondering why you're tired all the time, why you feel unappreciated, why you don't even recognize yourself in the mirror anymore. It's because you've been investing in people and places that only leave you broke. You have to protect your energy like it matters, because as Vitas, you only get so much focus, so much peace, so much clarity in a day. You only get so many healthy moments before stress, pressure, or life hits you with something unexpected. And the last thing you need is to waste what little energy you do have on people or problems that don't even belong to you. Just because someone is loud doesn't mean they deserve your attention. Just because someone is close doesn't mean they deserve your emotional labor. And just because something feels urgent doesn't mean it's important. You have to start distinguishing between real priorities and emotional noise. And that takes intentionality. It means checking in with yourself before you say yes. It means pausing before you respond, asking, is this mine to carry? It means learning that silence is not a lack of compassion. It's a boundary that protects your mind, your peace, and your future. from being constantly hijacked by other people's chaos. Because when you start spending your energy intentionally, things begin to shift. You feel lighter. You feel more present. You feel less reactive and more grounded. You realize you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to solve problems that weren't yours to begin with. You don't have to be everyone's emotional fixer. You're allowed to keep some of your energy for yourself. You're allowed to say, "Faye, not today," or "I'm not available for that conversation right now," without guilt. You're allowed to be unavailable. Not because you don't care, but because you finally care about value. When you start treating your energy like the powerful resource it is, other people start adjusting how they approach you. They realize they can't just take. They realize that being in your space is a privilege, not a guarantee. And that's how you shift the dynamic from being drained to being in control. Spend your energy like it costs something, because it does. Silence makes people uncomfortable. We live in a world that's so loud. Messages, notifications, opinions, distractions, constant noise. We've been conditioned to think that if we're not talking, posting, responding, explaining, then something's wrong. That silence means distance or avoidance or conflict, but silence is often the space where the truth finally has room to breathe. When you pull back and get quiet, you're not running away. You're recalibrating. You're letting the noise die down so you can actually hear yourself again. Because it's hard to hear your own thoughts when you're constantly tuned into everyone else's. You've got people in your life offering opinions you didn't ask for, placing expectations you never agreed to, and speaking so loud over your own needs that you stop listening to yourself. But when you stop responding right away, when you stop explaining yourself to everyone, when you stop giving people access to your every thought and movement, that's when clarity shows up. That's when you realize just how much of your energy has been going toward managing perceptions instead of managing peace. There's something powerful about the pause, about choosing not to react, about not filling the silence just to keep things comfortable for other people. That space is where healing happens, where truth rises to the surface, where you finally get clear on what's yours to carry and what you've been carrying out of guilt or fear or habit. And at first, silence feels foreign, especially if you're someone who's always been the communicator, the fixer, the one who bridges the gaps. You might feel guilty. You might feel like you're being cold or distant, but you're not. You're just learning how to sit with your own presence without trying to perform for someone else's comfort. You're allowed to take space. You're allowed to go quiet. You're allowed to pause before responding or not respond at all. You're allowed to retreat, not to disconnect from people, but to reconnect with yourself. Because when you're in silence, you see who respects your peace and who feels entitled to interrupt it. You see who checks in with you without needing a performance. You see what relationships are rooted in real connection, not just convenience or constant engagement. That clarity, it might sting a little. It might reveal things you were trying not to see. That maybe some people were only there for the version of you that kept showing up even when you were tired. That maybe the noise you thought was connection was really just distraction. But don't run from that. Don't try to fill that space too quickly. Let it be quiet long enough to learn something. Let the discomfort teach you what's been missing. Because once you get still, once you stop trying to fix or explain or entertain, you start asking better questions. You stop asking, how do I keep this going? And start asking, is this even good for me? You stop asking, what do they need from me? And start asking, what do I need right now? In that shift, that's where everything starts to change. Clarity doesn't come when you're overcommitted, distracted, or constantly reacting. Clarity comes when you give yourself the space to hear your own truth again. And it doesn't require anyone else's permission. You don't owe explanations for your silence. You don't owe guilt for protecting your peace. You owe yourself honesty, stillness, and time. Let the silence speak. Let it rearrange your priorities. Let it show you what's real and what was just noise. Because when you stop being constantly available, when you step back and get still, your vision sharpens, your mind clears, and your next move becomes obvious. Clarity lives in the quiet. When you stop being available to everyone else, you become deeply available to yourself. And that's when things start to shift in a real, undeniable way. It's subtle at first. You don't feel more powerful overnight, but something in you starts to wake up. Something quiet, steady, and grounded. Because let's be honest, when you're constantly making yourself available to everyone, you're not really present with anyone, especially not with yourself. Your attention is scattered. Your emotions are tangled up in everybody else's problems, and your peace is fragmented. You're reacting instead of choosing. You're stretched thin, trying to keep up, trying not to let anyone down. But when you finally draw that line, when you say, I'm not available for this anymore, you start showing up differently. You're not rushing to fix everything. You're not checking your phone every 5 minutes. You're not running on fumes just to keep up appearances. You're still, you're grounded. And more importantly, you're back in your own life. You start noticing things you hadn't seen in a while. That you're tired not just physically, but emotionally. That you've been pouring into relationships that stopped pouring back a long time ago. That you've been on autopilot saying yes out of habit, showing up out of obligation, pretending to be okay because it's easier than disappointing people. But now you're paying attention. And that's powerful because once you start honoring your own limits, your priorities become clear. You realize that peace isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you protect, and you start guarding it with the same energy you use to give away to everyone else. That's not selfish, that's self-awareness. That's wisdom. That's the difference between living a life that's yours and living one that's shaped entirely by other people's expectations. And let's talk about those expectations for a second, because the moment you stop being available, they come crawling out. Some folks get real uncomfortable when you set a boundary, not because you're doing something wrong, but because they've gotten used to you having none. They were comfortable with a version of you who always said yes, who never pushed back, who gave more than they ever gave in return. But here's the truth. The version of you who constantly sacrificed, who ignored their own needs, who kept the peace at the cost of their own, that version wasn't sustainable. That version was surviving, not thriving. And when you start choosing yourself, some people won't understand it. They'll say, you've changed. And they're right. You have. You've grown. You've stopped giving unlimited access to people who never earned it. And that right there, that's where your power lives. It lives in your no. It lives in your pause. It lives in your decision to choose rest instead of rushing, to choose reflection instead of reaction, to choose alignment over approval. Because once you stop being pulled in every direction, you realize you were never supposed to live stretched thin. You were never meant to be everything to everyone. You were meant to be fully you, not a fragmented version. And when you start showing up like that, clear, grounded, unapologetic, everything around you begins to shift. The way you communicate changes. The way you make decisions changes. The way you hold space for yourself deepens. You're no longer waiting for someone else to validate your worth. You're living it daily in how you speak, how you move, how you love, and how you let go. That's what happens when you stop being constantly available. You come home to yourself. You stop outsourcing your peace. You stop negotiating your boundaries, and you start owning your space. Not loudly, not aggressively, but quietly and confidently. That's the kind of power no one can take from you, because it wasn't given to you by anyone else. It was claimed by you for you. Power returns in boundaries. So here's the truth. When you stop being available to everything and everyone, everything starts to change. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you become clearer, stronger, more grounded. You stop living in response to other people's needs and start living in alignment with your own. You begin to understand that your time, your energy, your presence, it's not something to hand out on demand. It's something sacred. And when you protect it, you protect your peace. Some people won't like the new you, the version that doesn't overextend, doesn't always say yes, doesn't explain every boundary. Let them feel that. Let them adjust or let them leave, because the people meant for you won't be pushed away by your growth. They'll be drawn in by it. This isn't about becoming hard or distant. It's about becoming whole, about choosing intention over obligation, stillness over chaos, alignment over approval. And that shift That quiet, powerful shift is where your life begins to transform. Everything changes when you stop being available and start being present with